I feel fragmented when I am not with her, and people think that that's ridiculous, but it's how I honestly feel. It's how she feels. When we hold hands, we touch, it's like, I can breathe. I'm there.
Yeah.
And so she's my best friend. She's my partner. She's the first person I want to see in the morning, the last person I want to see at night. And if I can be with her most of the day, I'm happiest.
Your wife had a traumatic brain injury. Can you describe exactly what happened?
My wife was a freshman. She was dating a gentleman that was part of a fraternity. She wasn't feeling so well, so she went to bed in his bedroom, and his bed was elevated 9 feet in the air as a bunk bed. He came to bed drunk, pushed her out in her sleep. She fell 9 feet onto a coffee table. She was in hospital for about 6 months, and she had to learn to read, write, and walk all over again. She had broken clavicle and obviously a brain injury. Well, we met online. It was a joke. I was just out of a relationship, and she was looking for something serious. And the joke was on me because I fell in love with her on the first date. She called her parents about 6 months into the first date, said, I'm going to marry him. And I went home knowing that I was going to marry her. And eventually, about 2 years later, I did propose, and we got married, and we had kids. I can tell you that I didn't have money when I met my wife. And so for the first 15, 20 years of our lives together, was very humble. And it's all about connection, being together and feeling whole. There is an energy, like a charge that happens. Like even when we sleep in bed, our feet are touching. Like she powers me and I power her.
Justin, hi. Welcome to the Roller Coaster Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being on. I find you to be a pretty fascinating gentleman. I think just from the moment I saw you, something feels different. So excited to discover what that is today together. Okay. Your wife, Jojo, you've been married how long?
We have been together since 2020, and we've been married 21 years.
Okay. Prior to you guys meeting, your wife had a traumatic brain injury.
Yep.
Can you describe exactly what happened? And the reason I want to start here is because I think a lot of your life has been driven as a result of this brain injury that your wife had. And so I look forward to exploring why you do what you do today and why you've done what you've done for the last 20 years and how it's connected to this experience that you're about to share.
Okay. So my wife was a freshman at UC Santa Barbara. She was dating a gentleman that was part of a fraternity. She wasn't feeling so well, so she went to bed in his bedroom, which was shared with another individual. And his bed was elevated 9 feet in the air as a bunk bed. She was asleep, and normally she sleeps against the wall, but she was in the front. He came to bed drunk, pushed her out in her sleep. She fell 9 feet onto a coffee table and was unconscious. They think it happened around about 1 a.m. Not quite sure. The roommate wasn't there. When the roommate came back at 12 o'clock the following day, she was lying on the floor. Blood was coming out of her ear. The boyfriend was in bed, and she was unconscious. The fraternity had been in trouble from a party the week before, and so to avoid getting into further trouble, they decided to put her in a sleeping bag, throw her in the back of a pickup truck, and drop her off at the hospital versus calling the ambulance. She was in a coma for about 5 days, and when she woke, she had no recollection of what had happened or for what had occurred during high school. She had no memory of high school. She was in hospital for about 6 months, and she had to learn to read, write, and walk all over again. She had broken clavicle and obviously a brain injury.
What did they? How many details do you have from the time that she was in a coma? Has she shared that experience with you?
Yeah, a little bit, not too much. She doesn't remember.
Darkness. This is what she remembers.
What she remembers is a lot of screaming, a lot of profanity, a lot of confusion, and wanting to get out of hospital, not wanting to be there. Denial, didn't think that anything was wrong with her, and seeing traumatic injuries coming in every day, typically motorcycle injuries, people that hurt themselves falling off bicycles, meaning accidents. So much so that on our first date, she asked me if I rode a bicycle, and that if I ever wanted to be in a relationship with her, I could never ride one because it had traumatized her so much. But all that she really talks about was the fact that she was cussing and swearing at her parents, and all she wanted to do was go back to school. And when she eventually did go back to school, she realized pretty quickly that she couldn't function the way that she once did.
So my understanding is that, I think you mentioned 25% of her brain is now gone. You showed a photo of this.
Yeah, the MRI shows 25% of her front right lobe atrophied.
This is incredibly rare, I'm assuming. I think this happens like 10 out of a million cases or something, right?
I have no statistic to share, but it's not common.
Yeah.
To be functioning the way that she is functioning with that type of brain injury.
What did the doctors tell her coming out of the coma? Did they expect she was never going to be the same again?
Yeah.
Like never be able to talk, walk? I mean, how severe was this?
Most neurologists that look at it say that she shouldn't be walking, she shouldn't be talking, and she shouldn't be functioning the way that she is.
Today? All these years later?
Yep.
Okay. And you discover this woman in around the late 90s, maybe 2000.
Yep, 2000.
What is that like, the first time you met her? What do you remember about that experience?
Well, we met online. We were highly embarrassed because at the time...
In 2000?
Yep,
that was a thing?
It was the very first thing, yeah. We met online. It was a joke. I was just out of a relationship, and she was looking for something serious. And the joke was on me because I fell in love with her on the first date. We met at midday, and the date went past midnight to about 2 a.m. She called her parents about 6 months into the first date, said, I'm going to marry him. And I went home knowing that I was going to marry her.
What do you remember about the very first date?
Her hair.
And what
just
about
crazy curly hair everywhere. So I was in awe. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And she had a heart of gold. There was nothing that was pouring out of her that was anything malicious, vindictive, judgmental. She's walking pure love.
And there was no way that you would have known that she had been through a traumatic accident 5 years earlier.
Not on the first date. No way.
Totally normal.
Presented absolutely perfectly normal. Wouldn't have changed anything had I known.
Yeah. And how does the love story go? You have this first date. It's love at first sight.
Yep.
You know that you're going to get married.
Yep.
And how quickly does this thing progress?
Very quickly. We start dating, but being a typical guy, I didn't want to get married because I wasn't financially secure. And so I was constantly not going down that path, and that's what she wanted. And eventually, about 2 years later, I did propose, and we got married, and we had kids. And her past was catching up with her even after the second or third date. She just couldn't remember certain things, couldn't do certain things. And our relationship has just evolved where it doesn't matter. Those things don't matter. We had a joke when we had kids was, do you remember who I am? Yes. Do you remember our kids? Yes. Do you remember where you left them? Yes. Great. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. We've got lost walking around the block. Don't know where home is. We've lost keys, jewelry, clothing. Just stuff. Doesn't matter. We have each other.
If you were to sum that up in one line, nothing else matters but fill in the blank.
Each other.
That's it.
That's it.
So I know we don't know each other personally, but I went through something very traumatic. My wife was pronounced dead and lived through the experience. And we had been together 15 years at this time. We'd been married 10. We had 3 children together. And it was 5 months after the sale of a company where I made a few bucks and was young and rich and thought I had it all figured out. And then we went through this experience, and I'll forever describe my life as 31 years before the accident and everything after, because I had a rewiring of my brain, my physiology, just everything is different now. Mm-hmm. And I'm hurt in fact, I'll just show you this because I think what you're talking about is very close to home for me. Instead of saying hello, I said, what happened? And she says, Brooklyn, who's my wife, is in an ambulance going to the hospital. Mm-hmm. And we're not sure exactly what's going on, but it's really bad. I get in the Uber, I drive to the airport, I'm getting text message updates from my father-in-law the entire time. Hey, ambulance just got to the hospital. They checked her into triage. They're doing an ultrasound. They found 2 liters of blood in her abdomen. I go from pretty hopeful, not sure what's going on, to my wife's gonna die. I get on the plane, and every minute felt like an hour. As we're descending down to land back in Phoenix, I get a message that says something to the effect of, brace yourself. It doesn't look like she's gonna make it. My priorities were 100% out of whack. I was not a great father. I was not a great husband. I was chasing the next coin. The good end of the story is that she made it. She started becoming healthy. All that shit, all that money, at the end of the day, it does not really matter. The thing that matters in life is the depth and meaning of your relationships. And if you don't have those in line, life is pretty meaningless. Does that sound familiar?
100%.
The question that I get asked the most often, that video was seen by 20 plus million people. Mm-hmm. And the comments you wouldn't believe, so many of them are easy for you to say.
Yeah.
Guy with the money. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got your bases covered.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really easy for you to say that. And how do you help people really truly understand the meaning of life?
I have no idea, because everyone's definition is going to be different. I can tell you that I didn't have money when I met my wife, and I have only recently had successful exits. And so for the first 15, 20 years of our lives together, was very humble. And it's all about connection, being together and feeling whole. I feel fragmented when I am not with her, and people think that that's ridiculous, but it's how I honestly feel. It's how she feels. When we hold hands, we touch, it's like, I can breathe. I'm there. Yeah. And so she's my best friend. She's my partner. She's the first person I want to see in the morning, the last person I want to see at night. And if I can be with her most of the day, I'm happiest. And so it doesn't matter. Stuff doesn't matter. Stuff makes life easier, for sure. Certain stresses go away, but other stresses present themselves. For me, I feel like, based on what I just saw there, I would say we're very similar. It's about the relationship and the depth of the relationship, and knowing that you should live your life one day at a time as if tomorrow might not come. Yeah. Which is how we are with our kids. Yeah. And people are like, how come you're so close with your kids? How come the kids tell you everything? We're not judging them. They're experiencing. We let them fall. We're always there to pick them up if they need it. But half the time we're like, pick yourself up.
How do you describe this? When you find the person,
yep,
there's this oneness that can exist.
Yep.
Doesn't always, but it can exist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so powerful that I believe that oneness can actually save a life. And let me share an experience I had that would help articulate what I mean by this.
Okay.
When she was in the hospital, I expected to walk into a room to say goodbye to my deceased wife. And I walked in, and audibly, the first thing I heard was the heart rate monitor. And I heard it beeping. And so I realized that she was still breathing. She was still alive. Mm-hmm. And I sat down at her bed and I looked at her father-in-law and I said, how's she doing? Her dad, sorry, my father-in-law. And immediately when those words came out of my mouth, she had this seizure-like crazy reaction, unlike anything I've ever seen. She was in a state of comatose when this happened. And I ran out into the hall and I'm yelling for help, and they come in and they eventually get her calmed down. And then she goes right back into this state of comatose for a few days. And through a lot of miracles and through the grace of God, eventually, third or fourth day, she starts communicating. I remember asking her about this experience. I said, what happened? You had that seizure. And she said, by the way, I was on a flight from New York, and so this all happened when I wasn't there. She said, when I heard your voice, it gave me life. Mm. And so literally she was crossing over to the other side of the veil, and she heard me speak, and it was enough to pull her back, essentially, to stay. Wow. I interviewed a guy, it's actually a close friend of mine, who recently lost his wife from a battle with cancer. And it lasted only 17 days. It was really fast. And he recalls that they had released her from the hospital to die. She only had a few days left. They're in her room. He's holding her hand. And he said, when he let go of her hand, that's when she chose to leave. Mm. It was within seconds of letting go, she passed away. Wow. And so he said just the sheer connection of their hands was keeping her heart beating. Wow. And, you describe this similar thing, which is like, you guys have gotten to a place where you're like one person in a lot of ways. How do you describe that? What do you chalk that up as? And how does one develop that level of depth in their relationship with their person?
Wow. Don't know if I have an answer for that one, but I can tell you that it's like we charge each other. Like there's an energy, right? You're talking about energy and a connection. And we believe in spirituality. We believe we've been married many times before. We found each other again. Yeah. And cool. There is an energy, like a charge that happens. Like even when we sleep in bed, our feet are touching. Like we have physical touch all the time. And we believe it charges each other. Like she powers me and I power her. And how you get that? A whole bunch of cheesy words come to mind, from respect, admiration, love, unconditional love, no judgment, all those things that you hear about, how you should treat one another, but you have to truly believe it and live it and experience it. And it's a work in progress because, sure, we've had arguments, we've had disagreements, but as we get older, they seem to be shorter and shorter and fewer and fewer. What was once important is no longer important. I don't know. What I can say in the cheesiest way is that she has my heart, and I believe that she has mine.
Yeah, it's well said. You've talked a lot about, I think on this same vein, having a balanced lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And there's 5 words that you mention when talking about a balanced lifestyle. I'm going to share what they are. Okay. And then I'd like for you to describe in detail why you chose these 5 things. Okay. Quality time, mm-hmm. grounding, connection, play, and supplements. Let's start with quality time. Why do you think that belongs on the list? Because there's a lot of words you could have chose.
Quality time. Yeah, it's going to mean different things for different people. What's important to you? What is quality time? And some may say work is quality time. Some may say, being with their friends is quality time, or being with their loved ones, being with family. I believe a life is supposed to be balanced. And My grandparents always used to tell me the most interesting person in the room is someone that is well-bred, that can speak a little bit about a lot of things. And someone that knows a lot about one thing and one thing only isn't as interesting. And so I take that to heart when it comes to quality time. Just working is going to make me very dull. Just playing is not going to be able to be a good provider. And so quality time for me is family. Quality time is family. Work is a passion. Work is not work. Work is something I love to do because I enjoy it and I feel like I have purpose behind it. But for me, I need a balance. And quality time for me, when people say quality time, it's with my family, my wife and my kids.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs maybe in principle understand what you're saying, but find it really hard in practice to do what you're saying. How do you encourage entrepreneurs or just everyday working people to prioritize quality time with their kids, with their spouse, with their friends? Because I also find that to be one of the main things that can recharge your battery quickly is spending time with the people you love.
Yeah, because there's new purpose in your life. There's a reason for it. How to do it? Practice. I'm not very good at it.
Yeah, you still struggle with it
all the time.
Yeah.
I feel indebted and responsibility to my investors, to the people I'm trying to help.
Yeah.
And so there's guilt associated with, well, I could put another few hours in here, or I could do this. And I think I set myself up for that early on. When we had kids, I used to do the typical thing. I used to work. I used to go to the gym. I used to come home, and then I'd rinse and repeat the next day. When we had kids, that didn't work for me because I didn't see my kids. I got up, I went to work, I went to the gym. By the time I came home, they were in bed. And that didn't work for me. I think that's just in my DNA. And I wanted to be a good father. I wanted to be that. I wanted my kids to remember me. I didn't want to just show up all of a sudden when they were teenagers, right? And so I shifted my schedule so I would wake up at 4:30. I go to the gym. I would come home. I'd help with the kids, breakfast. I'd take them to school. My wife would pick them up. I'd leave work. I'd come home. I'd be home for dinner and do homework and be with the kids. And that worked for me, and it's always stuck. To this day, I have the same regimen minus the taking the kids to school and doing the homework. They're far smarter than me. I don't think I could do high school math anymore. So
no
I
chance.
just, no chance, right? No way. And so I just let I'm active. I enjoy being a dad. I enjoy being a husband. And I love what I do. And so trying to balance it is like balancing your checkbook, like balancing your schedule, your calendar. You make time for it because it's important.
Yeah, that's well said. Before we go to the next one, I want to go one click deeper on that.
Okay.
Being a father.
Yep.
Scale of 1 to 10. Like, how awesome and how important is being a father to you?
10, unquestionably. I have a lot of pride in my kids, a lot of joy that comes from my kids. And I'm blessed. They chose me.
What as a newer father, so I have 4 kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're 8 down to 1.
Congratulations.
I have a son and I have 3 daughters, and it's amazing. For a newer father, what advice would you give me?
Listen. Listen. I find that the kids have a unique perspective on life. Even at 3 and 4 years old, they're so untainted. They view the world in a different way. You're like, it makes me pause. Even today, they'll say some things. I'm like, I hadn't thought about it that way. And, I was brought up in London, and little boys were to be seen and not heard, and keep your opinions to yourself. Nothing but A's would suffice education-wise. When you have earned the right and you have an opinion, you can have one, and all that kind of fun stuff. I did the opposite with my kids. I wanted to hear what they had to say. I listened to them. They respect me as much as I respect them. So that's why my 19-year-old potentially overshares, but isn't anything he wouldn't share. I mean, He's in college and he calls me every day. He calls his mom every day. He loves his parents. My son, it blew up my wife and I away. He, is a good kid, was played lacrosse, was a sports guy, and it didn't matter where he was or who he was with. Every phone call, love you, mom, love you, dad. And our friends were like, your kid still says he loves you on the phone? I'm like, yeah, he does. You mandate that? Nope, just something that he's done. And so I feel like the kids are the next generation. It's our responsibility to make nice, loving human beings. And there's so much nastiness in the world. I don't need to contribute to that.
When you say make nice human beings.
Oh, absolutely.
What do you mean by that? Because I think there's a
live
balance.
By example.
Yeah.
Live by example.
How do we, I think when I describe this, it's like, being a father, the stakes are incredibly high because they're potentially eternal and generational. So if you mess up your kids,
which we do,
there's going to be a lot.
We've all messed them up
that are impacted by this, right? And so I put a lot of pressure on myself to be a great father, and I'm always trying to balance. How much do I let my children be and choose for themselves and think for themselves versus instilling core values and sharing and setting the example, right? So how do you find that balance? And did you have any non-negotiables, lines in the sand that you drew with your kids?
I'm sure lots of non-negotiables all the time. Work hard, study hard, treat people kindly. Every time I drop my kids off at school, it was never work hard. It was, how many people are you going to make smile today? Always. Because how you show up makes a big difference.
Yeah.
My kids, I had no idea they were potentially going to be good scholars. They might not have been good scholars, right? They might be autistic, they may not be. I had no idea. Let them choose their path. For me, it was my responsibility to expose them to different opportunities. So wherever I could afford to, I would present them with new experiences, not new toys, but new experiences.
Yeah. And
so that was a very keen aspect for me. And again, listening to what they want. Don't always have to give in and appease them, but listen to them and then talk to them. Don't lecture them.
Yeah.
Not so easy to do. There's plenty of times where my kids would say, well, you lectured me all the time. But, I believe that I listened, and then I would try to educate them as to why maybe it wasn't the best decision. But my wife and I were very yin and yang. I was very old school, and my wife was much more nurturing and loving. So they fell off their bicycle, I would not run up to them. I'd say, pick yourself up and get back on the bike and do it again, right? A little bit more tough love. My wife would be right over there, oh, are you okay? And pick them up and come inside, And so it was a good balancing act. But I had very strict grandparents, and I think that rubbed off on me in a good way. And so I instilled some of that with my kids, but more of let them explore, let them fail, let them figure some things out. You don't always have to be there to pick them up. And I think that's something that I saw in my peers where they were always picking up their kids.
Yeah. The how many people did you make smile today really resonates with me. I love this quote, and I can't recall who was the originator of it. It was probably, Marcus Aurelius or something a long time ago. Seems like everything comes from, the Stoics. But, the quote goes something like this. It goes, when you're at the end of your life, you're on your deathbed, you're not going to be remembered by how much money you had or the things you had or how good looking you were, how in shape you were,
right.
Any of these things. The only thing you'll be remembered by is how you made people feel. And I think that what you're describing with how many people are you going to make smile today, that's a great benchmark to live day in and day out throughout your life.
Right.
I love that. Talk about grounding and connection. I see these things as being similar but different. Why choose these two in your balanced lifestyle?
Grounding to me is important. It's something that is relatively new in my world. Everyone talks about being grounded. But to me, in my new context is actually being in nature, connecting, getting away from technology, getting away from kind of the hustle and bustle and just surrendering to the environment. My wife and I and our kids, we recently moved to Colorado about 3 years ago. And it's amazing the difference it's made in the ability to slow down, to pause, to be in nature, and just to be in awe of the beauty of where we live, compared to being in front of a TV or watch a movie or whatever you might do to occupy your time. And that grounding of actually taking your shoes off and being in nature and connecting with it is really humbling in so many different ways, because don't stop. We're always moving, and we're always racing for the next dollar or whatever it might be. And to actually pause and to stop and get grounded and realize, wow, there's more than just a TV or a screen or a monitor that we are perpetually living with these days.
Yeah.
And I think that really changes one's perspective quite quickly.
Well said. Connection.
Simple as that, connecting with people. A lot of the time, people don't do what you and I are doing, which is looking at each other in the eye and actually connecting and listening and hearing. We all have our own agendas, but some do it without the connection. And if you do it without the connection, you can't relate to that individual. You're not listening. That person doesn't feel heard. And connecting, listening, supporting one another, and being a decent person, because it's not all about you and your agenda. That connection is important.
Can you learn how to be a decent person?
Yes, I think you can.
So this isn't, this is more nurture than it is nature, being a decent person.
To me, yeah. Trying to do the right thing. Actually trying to do the right thing.
We all know what it is, right?
I don't know. I have less and less confidence in that these days. Doing the right thing is not easy. And in today's world, people want a magic pill, a simple solution, a quick get rich quick scheme, something that short circuits it because of the pace in which we operate.
Yeah.
And so doing the right thing is not always so easy, because it could be a longer path, a more costly path, a more expensive path. And therefore, we'll take the shortcut. And shortcuts rarely work out.
Talk about play. I think this one gets missed a lot.
You got to have some fun, even if it's naughty.
What's your version of fun these days?
I'm a petrol head. I love cars.
Same.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, yeah. Toys.
Yeah. Going fast.
Yeah. Go to the racetrack, drive, have some fun, work out.
I wish I would have known you were coming. I'm a member at a private racetrack out here. It would have been a blast to go down and turn some laps together. I'm more of a two-wheel guy, but I'm starting to get back into four-wheel.
Yeah, it's fun. It's I like activities and play that requires such concentration that you don't think about anything else.
Totally. It's
Like
hard to describe unless you've done it.
Nothing else.
You can't. Stakes are too high.
Correct. Your life is on the line. Something's on the line. And so play is complete disconnection from my brain.
Yeah.
I'm a big kid at heart. I have the largest collection of Lego cars and Technic stuff. And, I'll sit there, and my wife would even, started about 2 years ago, every holiday, she would bring me a new car to build in exchange for my phone and my laptop.
Nice.
And so she said, the only way that you get to disconnect is to disconnect. And so we did this exchange, and it's a lot of fun to do that. But yeah, play is play. Play is going on date nights with my wife. Play is taking the dogs for a walk. Play is being in nature. Play is doing something that stops me from thinking, because I'm having fun. I'm enjoying myself. Funny enough, that is a component that I agree with you. A lot of people forget about doing.
Yeah. I was at a big rival high school football game this last Friday, and I'm sitting next to a gentleman that I don't know that's there by himself, whose son played on the freshman team, but it was a big varsity game. So he chose to go and watch this game. And at some point he's like, man, life's weird. I'm like, yeah, tell me more. Mm-hmm. He's like, you wake up, you put on your shoes, you go to work, you come home, you eat dinner, you go to bed, and you do it all over again every day. And I was like, he's like, right? And I go,
nope.
No, that's not what I do at all.
Yeah.
He's like, really? What's your version of that? I go, it doesn't exist. I said every day is unique and different for me. Like, this is what I do. And here's how I spend time with my kids and my wife. And here's what I do for fun. And it's like, man, that's really cool. How do I do that? I'm like, how much time do you have? Right. Like to be able to, unlock that takes a bit. But I also think even if you're in the 9 to 5, man, once you realize that that is really not that important and you start to prioritize some of these things we're talking about, your life will change.
Well, I think it's because you and I have had similar life experience with our significant others.
Yeah.
My wife is nowhere near as bad as this, but I use it as a good analogy. If you've ever seen Adam Sandler's 50 First Dates,
yeah,
that's basically it.
Yeah.
Right. And she remembers where we are, where we live, and she's nowhere near that bad. But it's, her superpower is we can watch a movie that she saw yesterday. She doesn't remember it. I'm like, that is the coolest superpower I've ever seen in my life. Do you know how cool it would be to watch our favorite movies for the first time every day?
Yeah.
I'm like, that is awesome. And it's realizing that you can have fun. I mean, I still flirt with my wife. We still do things that we're kids. We'll have a food fight. We'll have we'll do stupid stuff, right? Just for the hell of it. And I think we lose that sense of play as we get older.
Yeah.
And people don't understand it. And I think when you realize what's important, then you can fragment your day and prioritize certain things and have some fun.
Yeah.
So, we live in the mountains in Boulder, Colorado. And, I come home, my wife, can we go for a drive? Can we go for a drive? And we just drive as the sun goes down over the mountains. And we just sit there and we look at each other like, wow, such a beautiful place. And you just surrender. We forget about the day, what's happened, good, bad, indifferent. And, just like she says, I love you. I love you back. And wow, we're so blessed. Yes, we're blessed. And the rest of the night, we do whatever we got to do. But it is surrendering and enjoying the balance of life and whatever that looks like for you, whatever you can find mutual interest.
Yeah. The last one, you don't see this on a list very often, supplements.
I wouldn't have said that. I'm not sure where you got that from. Maybe I was being sarcastic or talking about it, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about rebalance. And so really, it should say Superceuticals, which is our proprietary name for our product. I think having a life in today's world is not easy. There is so much coming at us in terms of content, information thrown at us. And what Rebalance is designed to do is support your cortisol levels to help get back cortisol into normal parameters, which should be high in the morning, low in the afternoon, and almost non-existent at night, so you can fall asleep quickly and stay asleep because you make your hormones in your sleep, particularly your deep sleep. And if you compromise that, you're going to operate at a hormone deficit the next day. And too many consecutive days, you start going in a downward spiral and you can't function. You're brain fogged, low energy, you start losing muscle mass. You're just not operating at your full potential. It shows up in many different ways, from higher levels of anxiety, low testosterone, exacerbated menopause symptoms, etc. So part of having a balanced life involves doing what we need to do as human beings, which is sleep. Simple as that. We need 7 to 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep in order for our body to regenerate and recharge, make the hormones we need to function the next day so we can get up and do it all over again. But if we don't, we start going in a downward spiral and our bodies start to fail us. And so maybe supplements in the context of where you're bringing it up is to support the pace at which life is operated in today in 2024. It's very different than what it was in the 1970s, 1980s, 1990s.
Yeah.
It's very different. And so supporting the body with a supplement that's natural, has ingredients to keep cortisol at bay, is what I'd like to think I was referring to in that comment.
It may have said sleep, and maybe I just said no. So you also said this. You said that the digital world, whether social media, email, the internet, streaming services, has increased cortisol exponentially and unreasonably over the last 40 years and has caused the true pandemic of the world to be cortisol.
Correct.
So why do you think, I mean, I don't feel like cortisol, when you think about the health experts out there, and this is from somebody who, by the way, doesn't study this deeply and doesn't find a lot of passion in studying this deeply. So very outsider looking in. I just don't feel like this is being talked about as much as other things.
Nope.
Why is that?
Because it's too many derivatives removed from a symptom. People don't say, I've got hot flashes. Where's your cortisol products?
Yeah.
I have low testosterone. Where's your cortisol products? I have GERD. Where are your cortisol products? People associate cortisol with fight or flight for the majority of people. But what they don't realize is that every molecule in the body has a cortisol receptor, unlike any other hormone in the body. And so when cortisol is out of whack, it affects you systemically from head to toe. And being a man with your history and your family history, if that phone rings and it's your kids or your wife, you have to answer it. That will spike your cortisol. And if that's happening all the time, it's becoming out of whack, because it could be good news, it could be bad news. Right? And so that's what's happening in the world, is we're constantly worried about what content is coming at us and then how to deal with that content, that information, whether it's an election issue, whether it's a business issue, whether it is a personal issue, financial issue, it always is going to affect us. And until we respond to it and understand it, we're in a state of anxiety. And so what's happening is the pace in which that information is coming at us from whichever source you want is disrupting our hormone system so much that we're in a perpetual state of elevated cortisol, anxiety, whatever you want to call it. Yes, they are slightly different, but you get the general idea. We're in this elevated state of alertness that we never were in. When we were 10, 8 years old, we weren't like that. We're like that because of the phase in life we're in, the responsibilities that we have, and because of the pace in which the world operates. My grandfather would wait for a letter to come in the mail, not an email. He would wait for a phone call, and based on time zones, things would happen at different pace. Yes, we have that today, but we substitute time zones with emails or text messages, and we're inundated. And so people don't talk about it because people haven't put the connection together as simply as we have figured out. And my long story short, my wife was diagnosed with Cushing's in 2020, which is an overdevelopment of cortisol, which preventing her to sleep. She was losing weight, she couldn't eat, and nothing was working for her. I thought she was actually going to die because nothing was working for her, and she was literally wasting away. And so it became even more important for me to find a solution for cortisol, even though I had started that process before she was diagnosed. And what I realized was this connection between sleep, cortisol, and basically disease. And it shows up in 101 different ways. What was really unique for us was we were looking at cortisol, only to find that we had a much bigger breadth of solutions for issues in the world today. Menopause. Women are suffering like crazy with menopausal symptoms. 49 million women enter menopause every year. It lasts 7 to 14 years on average. So we have a massive menopausal concern right now. Within a few months of taking our product, women were calling us saying, my hot flashes have gone. My mental clarity has improved. I'm losing weight. I feel energetic. I'm sleeping. I'm less anxious. I've got better recovery. And this went on for multiple months before we decided to do a formal study, an IRB clinical study. And out of this study, about halfway through, the North American Menopause Society, we shared the content and the information with them. They asked us to present at their annual meeting last year. It was in September of 2023, because the data was so unprecedented, to be quite frank about it. In Q1 of this year, we were published by the medical journal Nutraceuticals and Food Sciences. With 104 women in our study, we had 100% efficacy, no side effects, and the average woman saw a reduction in menopause symptoms of 80%. Why? Real simple. They slept, their body was able to generate the estrogen progesterone they needed to in their deep sleep, and they didn't wake up at night. And it's just simple as supporting and controlling cortisol. Same thing happened with men in a different way. Their testosterone levels started to increase. And we've got many reports of blood studies, blood tests that were done by individuals taking the product. Said, my testosterone has improved. My sleep has improved. We've got people saying, I feel significantly better all around, which makes perfect sense. If you don't sleep, you feel like shit. If you do sleep, you feel much better. And so we aren't being religious about being maniacal in regards to protecting our sleep. We all think we can operate on 4 or 5 hours, especially entrepreneurs. I can do this on 4 or 5 hours. I've got more stuff to do. Sleep's wasting time.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's helping you show up in the world like you want to show up in the world, with vibrancy and energy and enthusiasm and clear-mindedness, so that you can actually operate more effectively, so that maybe you have more time to play.
That was a great segue. That was really well said. Can I eat one of these?
Absolutely. I wouldn't take the Z because that's for sleep, but take the 1 or the 2. So there's slightly different formulations. They're lozenges.
Jeremy's been selling me hard on this.
Oh, has he?
He's not in here.
He's not here. It's pretty straightforward. It is a mint lozenge. There's a reason for the lozenge delivery, was because it actually is able to get into the bloodstream like a zinc lozenge would get into the body. It has all the ingredients that would probably fill your hand up if you were to take them as tablets. Don't chew them. You suck on them. If you chew them, it goes into your gut and most likely will get destroyed. And so 90% of supplements don't enter the bloodstream or in the body, because they get destroyed in the gut. And so this is something you just simply suck on like you would suck on a cough sweet and a mint, and you enjoy. The reason there's three of them is because you have a metabolism, which everyone forgets about. Anything you put in your body, you utilize every 4 to 6 hours.
So men's 1 a day, it's bullshit.
Men's 1 a day, they might have some rationale behind it. I'm just going to say, from my rationale, because my wife was diagnosed with Cushing's, we talk about doing the right thing. Because of this, right? I wasn't compromising. I don't compromise in my life, and I try to walk the higher ground wherever I can. But I wasn't going to cut corners on delivery. I wasn't going to cut corners on ingredient quality. I wasn't going to cut corners and do this in one product, because I would make significantly more profit if I had 1 of those jars instead of 3 of them on your table, right, for the same price. And so the reason it's there is because when you put something in your body, it gets utilized. And if cortisol is 24 hours a day, you need to support it throughout the day and the night to the best of our abilities. And so obviously I don't want to wake you up in the night to take something, so I do my very best to space this out. But you need a good start to the day, which is the first product, morning. You need a transition from what I call work mode to play mode, which is your number 2. Most people work 9 to 5, and around 2, 3 o'clock, they need to start transitioning and get ready for what comes next in their day, which doesn't involve work. And then the last one, the Z, is the bedtime product that I literally take moments before going to bed. And that's got additional ingredients to support cortisol throughout the night, so that you can actually, it's not the falling asleep quickly that I get so hung up about, it's the staying asleep that's critical. You only get 60 to 90 minutes of deep sleep a night. That's where you make your hormones.
Yeah.
And so if you don't get the 7 to 8 hours, you are compromising the duration of those 60 to 90 minutes. Yeah. And therefore, you're not making the hormones you need. So being very protective over your sleep is almost as important as anything else you do. I should say not almost, is.
Justin, you've done this a few times. My understanding is you've had a couple of nice exits. You started a company called Alastin Skincare. Mm-hmm. Was this your first company?
That was my first company with my partner. Yeah.
What was the outcome in that business?
We sold it to Galderma.
For?
A lot of money.
Like a B plus?
No.
Below that?
Hundreds
of millions. You started a company called Prometheus Labs?
Nope, I did not.
You were a part of Prometheus Labs?
Nope, I was not. My partner was. My partner's history and my history get convoluted. My partner's in his, he's more mature than I am. He's been around the block. I'm exceptionally privileged to have him as being my mentor and my guide.
So you and Scott are working on this together?
Yep, Scott and I started the company together.
Amazing. Yep. And you think this one, again, financially, monetarily, I care about this much, about those things. But you think this one has a financial outcome that could be as big as what you've done in the past?
I certainly hope so.
Maybe bigger?
I have no idea. I would like to think so. I'm working to make that the case. My shareholders are definitely counting on me doing that. Yeah. This is, again, doing the right thing. There's a problem. We have, as far as we know, the only viable solution with multiple clinical studies. It's natural, with the exception of 1 or 2 ingredients that are synthetic. But out of the 21 ingredients we use, 2 are synthetic. This product works. Not many supplement companies, if any, go through formal IRB double-blind placebo studies time and time again to prove efficacy, which is what we're doing.
Yeah,
and we're solving a real problem.
The brain damage and hard work.
We've gone through all of that, and trust me, it never tasted this good. It used to taste like complete,
It's hard to get it down
because no one came up with the idea of sucking on roots and herbs, right? That's not a good idea, right? In general, for its taste profile, but from an efficacy standpoint, we believe it's absolutely the right thing, and our studies have backed that up. We have a solution. We have a very good solution. It's not so easy to get the word out.
Why is that?
The world's a different place today than it ever has been. Unless you're paying big celebrities and people a ridiculous amount of money up front, you're not going to get that endorsement. And there's only so much capital available to companies when you start up, and you have to prove yourself. And so we've proven it, and now we need to get the word out. I think in general, people are skeptical because supplements have been a dirty word for so long. We hope to change that.
How hard is it to get a product like this? Like, your moat from competitors has to be the brain damage of trials and clinical studies and FDA approvals and the whole deal to actually have the right to sell this. Is that right?
Yes and no. The supplement-wide supplements have kind of a gray cloud over them is because they're not controlled by the FDA. You can't have any claims associated with them. And the majority of supplements are private labeled. So there's a couple of big manufacturers. You want to start your own company, you can just go there, put your label on it, and sell it.
Yeah.
And so what's different about this is our own proprietary formulation that we designed from soup to nuts, our own delivery system we created, our own tests. We didn't just test the ingredients, say, here's a study done by X manufacturer ingredients. We have that ingredients, therefore that study is applicable to us. We actually tested the product and then published studies on the product. We actually have a press release coming out later on next week talking about sleep we had a study done by Sleep Score, which is one of the largest research sleep clinics in the country. And they said, we have statistically significant data on the quality of sleep utilizing this particular product. Improved sleep duration, faster falling asleep time, sleep maintenance, and so forth. So we're thrilled. And we will keep doing these studies to help prove the efficacy to separate ourselves from the pack that may have not been
as diligent.
Sure.
Or honest.
I don't think companies go out there to deliberately defraud people. I know that might be naive. I like
Sure.
to think people are inherently good and things get in the way, desperation, time, and so forth. But I really believe that we have done the right thing for the right reasons with a real solution. And now it's about getting the word out to the masses. I would love someone of significance to step up to the plate and say, I have a platform. I have made all the money I need in the world. Let me help get the word out for something that is actually efficacious, viable, and can be stood behind without saying, grease my palms and then I'll help you. And I know that's very idealistic, but one would hope that someone would actually read the content, the studies, try the product and go, you know what, let's help solve this problem. Because there's a lot of people talking about menopause, but there's not a lot of people actually coming up with viable solutions. And we have that as a viable solution for one of our 3 systems.
Justin, thank you for coming on the show. I find you to be somebody who's really soft-spoken and calm and articulate and just connected.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
Appreciate you flying out and doing this today.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.